Yeah, so we've got actually our show just dropped on 32-bit. For folks that are watching, go ahead and check out the YouTube channel 302TWOBIT 32-bit. So our episodes will be there along with being on Facebook Live, along with a number of other shows that we've got there, like Marcus Grant on his show to be named later. It's a Vibe. I think like 2-3 other shows that are be coming on weekly. But yeah, I mean, it's good to be a part of the network, and I'm glad that we're able to get this show out to some more people. So yeah, definitely go and check that out if you haven't already.
All right. Well, I think we're talking about hops this evening. I guess we're done with the recipe stuff.
Yeah.
Did you get anybody come in? Anybody that's interested in making the recipe that we did? I know you two are going to do it.
So I have not gotten to it yet. My life got a little hectic there for a minute, but I'm going to upload the recipe onto the website. And so if you do want to brew it, me and Chris had already discussed about getting some multi-camera angled brew day pictures or footage. So
like we're gonna do like a walkthrough of that actual recipe,
kind of like a how-to brew / whatever. I don't know if we're probably not gonna stream that one live. We'll probably record that one and just upload it.
Yeah,
so we'll throw a link in Facebook and YouTube because it'll probably be a YouTube link. But before we get started, I just want to say we still have one position open here at the store, either 2 part-time or 1 full-time Monday through Friday. So please email me or phone in if you are interested in working here at HBYOB. Other than that, we can jump straight into hop rhizomes or growing hops.
Growing hops. Gardening is what we're going to talk about today, which is good because I guess let's start there. What is the season for growing hops?
Right now, that's the reason why I wanted to bring up the topic. While the show was booting, added a link there in the description. So you can go to our website and reserve hop rhizomes. They are should be shipping any day now. So they are there for pre-sale. That way you can get yours reserved. You get an email when they're ready for pickup when they come in the store, or we could even ship them to you. The best time to plant hop rhizomes are after the last frost, just like a lot of other plants. Last frost is the best time to plant them. Obviously time that better. They are perennial, I believe is the right word, which means they grow back every year. Mm-hmm. So your first year, you're not going to get the greatest yield. You'll probably get at least a couple 2-3 ounces, but each year after that, you don't have to do anything at the end of the year. We can get into how to grow them and all that in just a moment, but basically the nice thing about them is kind of set them and forget them. So they come back every year, but if it's your first time growing them, like I said, you're going to want to get them in the dirt after the last frost.
Well, I know the answer, so I won't ask you. Chris, have you ever grown your own hops?
Yes, I have. I actually bought some from Joey maybe a couple years ago. Yeah.
Are you still partaking from that same planting? Because like I said, because they're perennial, they should come up every year. Are you still doing that, or?
Yes, actually I am. And just like Joey said, and the way he described it, it actually came out that the first year I had like a few cones like here and there, but they didn't really yield as many in terms of like the actual, what's the name for Joey? The lupulin? I can never pronounce it right. But all right. But it didn't yield enough of the oil so that you're actually yielding as much in terms of like the bitterness that you would want from that particular hops. So, but the next year had more cones, stronger in terms of the bitterness. And so like each year it's kind of gotten progressively better. But I don't use a ton of them because I only have just like the one vine. But still, it's really good, like having, at least it's really cool to me being able to see something grow and being able to use it like in your brew.
Mm-hmm. That's the nice thing about them is they grow back every year. First year, like I said, generally don't get the greatest of, they say you don't. I've had great success first year many times. They say a lot of times that you don't, but like I said, I've had a lot of great success with them. When I grow mine, truly all I do when you get them, they're just like a little twig that you get. It looks like a little stick. And all I do is...
So it's like a root?
Yeah, I mean, that what the rhizomes are technically what the farmers do is they cut off pieces of the root from the plant. So you're just putting that in there, and there's little like white buds on them. I don't know. Do you know how to share this screen?
So okay, I see there, right? So
Yeah,
if you
showing
go
Mark.
back,
If you
then
go
you
to the
can.
link,
Yeah, if you go back, then we can share the screen.
um,
So that's what you're planting, and you plant it when you plant it. Is it a below ground planting like a seed, or do you leave some of it above ground?
so you're gonna want to, let's see if that worked. Yeah. So I don't know if you can, I don't think you can see my mouse. That's kind of what they look like. And then there's little white things that come off it that are going to be the shoots
Okay.
that grow. And truly, yes, you want it all under the dirt. You want it all under the dirt, but seriously, like, I know you can't take that as a measurement, but truly, I just use my fingers. I use my fingers and just ever so gently just truly pull back the dirt and then just pour the dirt back on top of it. I don't use any fancy topsoil, nothing. I truly just ground dirt. They love light and don't need much water. So the only thing I would recommend, a couple things. One would be, for some reason where I live, squirrels and rabbits love to dig them up and take off with them before they ever even have a chance to grow. So I put mine in a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a big Tupperware, not Tupperware, like a big planter pot, because the root systems on them get very, very like aggressive. I mean, they are
deep or out.
Both.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking like
that would be hard. Bushes? I would think in a pot. Then.
Well, that's the reason why you want a really big one.
Okay.
Because if you plant them up next to your house, they will.
Right. I saw where you had your.
Yeah. That's the downfall. The root systems get so crazy after about 3-4 years. That's about all you're going to get out of them before I would either transform them into the dirt or get new ones going, because the rhizomes are fairly affordable.
Todd's asking how big when the plant is mature, how tall? I've seen pictures. I don't know if every species, I mean, are there different varieties when you plant like that? Or
so if you go to the link on there, I think we had just over a dozen different varieties, anywhere from Willamette, Cluster, Cashmere, Sterling, Nugget. I mean, we have a bunch of different options. Some grow better in Ohio with our climate than others. So I had good success with Cascade, Northern Brewer, and Zeus were the ones I've had personally the best success. Centennial didn't work very good for me, but I've had other people have varying results.
And I had Northern Brewer with mine, and at least for how tall, I guess, Joey, because you had yours going lengthwise, like along your fence, didn't you? At your old place, like I had one going like up a trellis, and mine went up the entire side of my house.
So they will grow. I guess to answer Todd's question, they will grow 12 to year 2. They will grow 12 to 15 feet tall. They do want to grow straight. The ones Chris are talking about were seriously the ones I didn't sell, and they sat in the fridge for like 4 months. And so I was like, before I throw them away, I'll just throw them in the dirt. They didn't do anything the year I threw them in the dirt, but the next year they grew everywhere. So even if you buy them, throw them your refrigerator and forget about them, I would not worry too much about still throwing them in the dirt. I would still throw them in the dirt before I throw them away, but that's what I was getting to. Like, don't spend a bunch of money on, nice planters and topsoil and all that, which gets to my, so I talked about, keeping critters away from them. That's just so they have good success getting started. The other downfall is I want to make sure I get this out of my head before I forget. Hops are very toxic to dogs. It's a very real thing. If they eat too much of them, they basically, we sweat when we get hot, dogs pant, and it does something to their bodies, basically overheat. So it's a very real thing. So if you have pets, in my experience, my dogs never cared about them. However, when most horror stories you heard is at the end of a brew day, when the sweet warts, when they threw them into the beer, those hops were the ones that you have to be concerned about, because the sweetness from the beer or the wort is what the dogs are wanting to eat.
Gotcha.
But like I said, I won't get hung up on for too long. Just letting everybody know, if you do have pets, I've never even seen a hop fall off the vine, because they basically grow like grapes. But it is just something I want to make sure everybody knows. If you have pets and it's of concern to you,
especially smaller dogs, I would assume if you have something like a Chihuahua or something like that, you would want to be especially careful.
But they don't eat anything.
Well, that's the other thing. Is like the dog we have now, he'll eat everything. Our
Everything
old
goes in
dogs,
its mouth.
everything goes in his mouth. So, like I said, I don't have the house I used to have anymore. My new house, I left all my hops at my old house, so I got to get started again.
Oh, you didn't? You kept those with the house you sold?
That was a housewarming gift.
The person that bought the house has his own hops.
I'm
now.
sure he hates me for it because they're probably growing.
They probably
everywhere
ripped it
right
out.
now.
Yeah, they probably ripped it out.
Well,
I actually told him about it, and that's the other thing. If say you don't want to do them anymore, as soon as they start sprouting up, they look like asparagus coming out. You want to have just weed whack them down, and you don't have to worry about them. Their root system will still grow.
But let's start at the beginning as someone who's never done it, and a novice. So, step one is picking out what variety is best for Ohio. I'd assume if they come in the store and just ask you, you have an idea what's better, or
it all depends. Ohio would be less. The house I used to live in didn't get much sun, and they love sun. So I think I had certain varieties do well for me that other people might have varying experiences. So I would say get a variety because you're going to have a ton of them. And mark which ones are what.
I got you. So
Because by the end, I couldn't tell you what I had growing. They just were growing everywhere.
I got a quick question.
Yeah.
So what do you do in the off season? So like once we get into November, December, and we know nothing's going to be growing, I mean, do you cut down the old vine and just wait for next season, or what do you do?
I don't do anything because the vines, even if you cut them at the base, the vines don't like wither away. Like you'll see the old vine.
Well, usually perennials at some point the leaf just turns brown.
Well, what crop
and dies, and you don't have to do much.
Well, yeah. The biggest thing is for most hop harvesters, they put what you want to do. So I guess I need to start from the very beginning.
Well, that's right. Let's go back because Chris kind of jumped to the end. Right. The beginning is pick out what variety.
Yep.
The second thing is, to me, especially here in Ohio, is you said before the next, after the last frost, what are the soil recommendations?
That's what I'm saying. I did like a 50-50 blend of what was in the dirt and some just cheap topsoil from the store.
Okay.
When I did them in planters, and I just kind of like blended them 50-50. I don't think it technically matters. Like I said, they like no pun intended. They are in the weed. Grow. They are in the weed family.
Yes,
and so
they are.
They grow and they grow like weeds. So they really don't.
Okay.
You really don't have to do anything special as far as dirt goes. Then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have them planted where you can build a trellis, which for me it was my fence line. I've also had, I don't know if you ever
grow
my house.
Up or out.
Yeah.
Either option. The ones I've seen professionally, the fields of them, they're all seem to be growing up in most cases.
They do like to grow straight up. They like to grow straight up towards the sun. And then what you're going to want to do is get a trellis set up, and you don't want to use wire. You don't want to use anything smooth for the rope for them to grow up. No, they need something to grab on because when you fill them, they almost feel like a cat tongue. They've got it like a real prickly. Weird. Yeah, they're not prickly like it'll hurt you, but
right, I know.
It's got like a real soft. And so you don't want a rope that's smooth because they need something to grab onto to grow. So most people either use like hemp rope, baling rope, like hay baling rope, or when I used hay baling rope, it was too thin. The weather broke it like quickly. So now I use real thick. I think it's like the same stuff like your kids like swing on. Style rope, except I would get like unbleached, all that good stuff. Did you just
attach it to something high? Did you?
I made like a really tall like clothesline, a super tall. I just real thin, dug it in the dirt, put a T up top and an eye bolt, and then I put the rope there, and then went from there to like my tree or my shed, just different places for it to kind of grow like a canopy, because they do grow super super tall. Like I said, if you want to grow them close to your house, that's great, but you're going to grow them on the side of your house that gets the most sunlight. Because I've seen people like attach them to like the very
Chris,
top.
are yours growing up? What do you have yours growing on?
Yeah, I've got a trellis set up right on the front of my house so that they'll just grow right up the side of my house, like right alongside my one of the bedrooms, and then it'll just go right up alongside there, and it's right next to where my garden is at, so it always gets like a constant feed of water, like because I have rainwater like going in there. So
And
do you have them planted, north, south, east, west of the house? How much sun are they getting?
So they're on the west side of the house. So in the morning there is some.
I think we lost him.
Yeah, you got to keep him up.
No, I think we lost him. Sorry, Chris, we're gonna cut you off because I think we lost you. So basically, all right, you're back. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was saying that since they're on the west side of the house for at least 6 hours a day, they're getting all the possible sun they can.
Okay.
Yeah. So then basically, the next key thing that you need to worry about is when they, like I said, they start looking like asparagus tentacles coming up through the ground. You're going to want to pick 2 or 3 max, and then cut all the other ones back, because you want to train them to start up. Most of the time it's too late for me, because one day they seriously grow 6 to 12 inches a day.
Yep.
when they take off. So you'll come home one day and they'll just barely be out of the dirt, and like time gets away, and 2 days later they've already grabbed and gone crazy. But in a perfect world, what you want to do is pick 2 to 3 shoots, no more, and cut the others back, and you want to just barely start to train them, just like water in a toilet bowl. In America, it's clockwise.
Mm-hmm.
In other countries, it's equator stuff.
Stuff.
So in America, we want to go clockwise. You want to train them because that's the way they want to grow, because we're above the equator. Mm-hmm. And then, but you only want 2 to 3 shoots to grow up the twine, because if you let more than that do, they'll crowd each other out and they won't drop the cones. And that's what, as homebrewers, that's what we're after. We're after the cones. They're beautiful if you let them just go crazy.
Do they flower? Is there a flower eventually?
There's like a weird, like mini itty bitty flower before they cone. But the leaves almost look like almost like poison ivy.
You keep
leaves.
saying cone. So is it the leaf that comes together and twirls, or is the cone itself a flower?
That I don't know. I believe it starts from a flower. It has to start from a flower, because we're after the lupulin gland, which is just like the yellow part of like a dandelion.
Right.
And that's what we're after.
Okay. Well, we'll get there in a second. We'll get to harvesting here in a second. So we got them going up our rope.
Yep,
we got them
let 2 or 3 grow. Then we trained them. They're growing.
Gotcha. And when you do finally start seeing the cone, is that months, weeks, 6 months? I mean, when will we start actually seeing the cone develop?
That I don't know. Generally, like, supposedly there's 2 harvests that you can do. I've never got those type of success, but I would say July is probably when the cones are about ready.
Okay, Chris, has that been your recollection?
Yeah, I was going to say about a few months before you start seeing like actual cones. And then depending on what you're trying to harvest or get out of, and like how many cycles you've already gone through on that vine, maybe you want to let them go a little bit longer, maybe get a little bit bigger so you can extract more oil from it. But yeah, I think you'll probably start seeing them in about 2 to 3 months.
Okay. And then like other things you grow, if you add or remove, like tomatoes, I know if you take and eliminate some of the branches and all that, the few tomatoes that actually grow will grow bigger and juicier. Do you have to do any of that? Do you have to do any pruning? Do you have to do anything else? Like pick a few cones out so that the cones that you use are more potent, or that's not something you have to do?
I'm pretty lazy with it, so okay. I'm sure
Same.
Some other people would tell you.
Are these magic beans?
Yeah, I'm pretty lazy with it, so I'm not. That part I don't know too much. I just know the like growing hops 101 version of it. Like if I was a hop farmer, I'd probably have a whole lot more information.
Okay, then as a store owner, do you have I'm not saying a hop farmer. Have you dealt with a few customers that really are deep into this? I mean,
yeah, for sure. Well, no,
is it a part of the hobby as a brewer, or is it a part of a hobby as a gardener? Or like maybe I'll ask Chris, because it sounds like he does both. Or do you just bring it together to do both? Do you consider this gardening or brewing?
A little bit of both. I think more brewing than anything else, because like Joey was saying at the start, it's more, I mean, you don't really have to do much. Like planting takes all of 2 minutes, and there's really not a ton of maintenance other than cutting it back those first few shoots. So it's not like gardening, like where you are kind of going out and trying to maintain the plants like throughout their lifespan. So I do consider it to be more brewing than anything else.
I was going to say, I did have 1 year where I grew mine next. We have like a raised bed garden, and the caterpillars just ate everything. I had 1 year where like a couple of my rhizomes just did nothing. And I think the caterpillars came because of the tomatoes we were growing or something in my garden, but they grabbed onto my hops they ate absolutely everything before they even had a chance of growing.
All right. So then okay, so it's July, like Chris said, maybe a couple of months.
Mhm.
We see cones.
Yep.
When do we know the cone is ready to be harvested?
So when the cone's ready to be harvested, the best way is, I read this on the internet and it's so true. You want to squeeze the cone, and then when it starts to feel like not wrapping paper, like paper mache, not paper mache,
Almost like
paper.
crispy.
Tissue paper.
Yeah, it's almost got like a crispy kind of like that. The paper you put in when you put a gift in a like a bag. You know what I'm talking about? That
Yeah, I
type
know
of
what you're
paper.
talking about. Yeah.
It's kind of got like a crunchy. The ends of the hop cones leaves will start to brown.
They're drying out.
They're drying out, and that's probably when the pollen or the lupulin gland's at its best. Like I said, they're just kind of crunchy when you squeeze them. If they're real soft, let them keep going. And the biggest reason I think as a home brewer is you want to get some of those grassy notes. We're waiting for them to kind of dry on the vine to get the grassy notes out of the hop cone. I could be wrong there, but that's when I found you will know. You'll go out there and kind of squeeze one or two, and I always pull one off, squeeze it, open it up, smell it, and I've even dunked it in beer and stuff like that. But when they get kind of crunchy, when you squeeze them, that's when you can either cut the trellis, let it fall down, and just pick them all out. Or if you want to get on a ladder and pick them up with a bucket or whatever, they say they'll drop twice in 1 year. The cones will drop twice in 1 year. I've never got that experience. Like I said, it could just be because I don't have much sunlight where I'm at. I've only got one drop per year of cones.
How many cones, if we plant, I don't even know. Let's say we plant 2 or 3 of these. How many cones are we going to get per vine?
Hundreds.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably on a I know you can't on a 12-inch section. There's probably 12 cones.
Okay.
I mean, they're everywhere.
And then how many cones are required for a standard 5-gallon brew?
So, well, standard 5-gallon brew is subjective because it depends on what style of beer you're going to make.
Right.
I guess the best way to explain it would be they say when you're using homegrown hops, because pellets, they're cutting away a lot of that leafy matter that doesn't contribute to your beer. So you should truly times whatever your recipe is calling for. Say you wanted to use Centennial hops. If your recipe calls for 1 ounce, homegrown hops use 3 to 4 ounces.
Okay, so you're 3 or 4 times
significantly
the
more
recipe because they're less potent?
Because they're wet hops at that point.
Ooh.
So the other thing is, like, if you put, because the hops we get are dehydrated.
Yes.
So if you put the same pound of hops into a dehydrator, you'd be lucky to get 4 ounces when you're done.
Okay.
Because there's so much water weight in those hops. Because I've done it. Like, I have hops in there that I've
dehydrated
and vacuum sealed in bag. Those, like I said, you're going to lose it. There's a shit ton of water weight in the hops when you're plucking them off there. So that's where it merits 3 to 4 times. And then you got to factor all the leafy matter that's been removed from the pelletization process.
I got you. So, Chris, when you use your homemade hops, how are you adjusting? Are you doing that same adjustment for your recipes?
Exactly. Yeah. And I try and typically I use a bit more because I get antsy and sometimes I'll cut the vine down because not all of them are growing at the same rate, right? So you'll have some that look like they're browning and ready to go, and maybe others closer to the root that haven't grown as much, but I'll just take the whole vine. So I'll probably bias it more on like when Joey said 3 to 4, I'll go more towards the 4 side in terms of how much I'll add extra, just because I know some of them are a bit smaller.
Right. What variety of hops have you done in the past?
Northern Brewer is what I've stuck with, just because it's one of those more common hops that if you want to use it for like multi-purpose hops, like that's the type of thing that you're looking for. You can use it Northern Brewer for that.
Okay, meaning it's just a hop that you can. It's just you can kind of adapt it for most recipes.
Pretty much, yeah. Because you want to use it for bittering, you can use it for bittering. You want to use it for aroma, that's not the best, but you can use it for that. So it's kind of an all-around type of hops.
Okay.
Well, I brought out, this was a pound, and as you can see, Mark, that's what, not maybe a quarter pound.
Yeah,
but
man, that doesn't smell good. What is this?
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay, great. We're just gonna make I don't know recipe,
but it's Citra. We'll just say it's Citra. It's probably Citra.
It does smell like Citra.
They are very aromatic.
They are very
good. These are like 2 or 3 years old. I don't know if you can see them on camera there.
2 or 3 years old, and they've been in the freezer vacuum sealed.
Yeah, I had them vacuum sealed. They were in the freezer. But my point is, these, because I didn't use them immediately, what I did was
just the cone, or this is the
that's
part,
everything.
that's leaf and everything. Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the vacuum seal in the freezer have got them all and turned into one brick. But They do
it does
smell really good, don't they?
It does.
Yeah.
Now I'm thirsty for a nice citrusy beer.
But
Okay.
I just wanted to bring those out to kind of show you this was a pound. And after I stuck them in my dehydrator and vacuum sealed them, this is maybe 4 ounces. So
Frank in the chat room said he tried and didn't have much success, I'm assuming, growing his hops. Frank, I'd be curious when you say no luck, what your issue was. Did you just not have success growing the plant, Frank, or did you not have success with getting the right amount or cone out of it to even brew with? So, Chris, my next question is a person's brewed with it. Are you doing this just like I know you? So you're probably just doing it partly as an, just as part of the hobby.
Uh-huh.
But is the benefit cost, flavor, or just another aspect? Neither, and it's just an aspect of the hobby that you think would have been more enjoyable.
Yeah, it's just more of understanding the hobby and what goes into it. Because if I could, I would grow all of the hops that I typically would use, because I don't use Northern Brewer a ton. But if I could do Citra, Centennial, and all the rest of them, but just because, like Joey was saying, because of climate in Ohio, it's just not as easy to do some of those strains. So, but yeah, I think it's more for just understanding what goes into it. And it's just like anything else. I mean, you kind of want to understand all that goes into the hobby, almost like water chemistry, but like water chemistry is probably the last thing I'll ever want to understand about home brewing. But that's really like why I like growing the hops.
It's like playing fantasy football and then dabbling in defense,
Pretty much.
Defensive leagues. Just you're like, well, I just kind of want to know. I don't think I want to do it. I just kind of want to do it.
You just want to do it once and just like kind of dip your toe in there.
It sucks.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to mention to Frank, he had a good question here. He said he did his in a 5-gallon bucket. That's actually what I did. Was with my old brew pails, when I was done with them, because they got super stained and scratched, that's what I would use to start my hops in. But one thing a tip I would say, Frank, that you might have some better success in the future is drill a bunch of holes in the bottom of the bucket. That way, if an excessive amount of water gets in there, it can drain out of
and
the
not
dirt.
Flood them out.
Because if you flood them, they will certainly not grow. And
I guess I'd also now be curious to ask Frank. I'm curious with Frank why he did the 5-gallon bucket versus just in the ground. Can you do it as a starter in a pot or a bucket and then move it to the ground?
No,
or
like I said, the root system gets so vicious. I mean, it'll crack up concrete and stuff. I mean,
okay.
That's the only thing. But one thing I wanted to show you before I got sealed all that yellow stuff, that's the lupulin gland. That's technically what we're after. All the green stuff around is not what we're after.
Yeah, you're looking for the yellow stuff.
So once now this is frozen, so you eventually would pick that out individually?
No, so that's what I'm saying. When you're brewing with them, because when you pelletize, when they're pelletized, you can see this whole. I don't know if you guys can see on camera. In the top.
Yeah.
So basically, everything inside my hands, what we're after in the pelletization process, they're going to cut all this away. They're going to throw that away, and that's going to be what's in your pellet.
Gotcha.
So that's the reason why we want to use significantly more
because you're using.
But to sit there and break all. Because we don't have machinery, it's just easier to throw 3 to 4 times more.
That makes sense, though. Now that I've seen it. Yeah, Frank said he tried. Okay, I was assuming, based on what he's saying here, I'd say Frank tried to do in a bucket because it's a weed and he didn't want it to take over somewhere else. So the bucket would give him control of that. And that's why he did say he put a hole in the bottom of the bucket.
Yep.
So
that would be my biggest key is put a hole in the bottom of the bucket. Now, the con to that is after the 3 to 4 year marker, you're going to start seeing a big drop off because the root system's
can't get any bigger.
It can't get bigger, so it's going to struggle.
Right.
Versus if you were just growing it in a farm, I think at like year 5 or 6 is when the farmers dig it all out and start over because they're getting less and less yield.
Okay.
But I mean, in a nutshell, that's really what you do to grow hops. Like I said, if you guys want to, if anybody wants to get any on pre-order, that I think we'll provide another link here in the chat. That was what I was looking for earlier, and you can order them for pre-order on the website. Feel free to ask me any questions you want. Like I said, I do it more for the novelty of it.
Sure.
I'm not doing it to, when I use mine. I guess that would be the last thing we can sum up.
Okay, well then. So then now let's go to the last step, which would be Chris's. We've harvested everything. Now we just have the plant there. Based on what you've described, I'm assuming you don't do anything. You let the plant die and come back next year.
Yeah.
I think Chris's question is, Chris, I mean, if you can say if I'm right or not, Chris wants to know, I guess, can you cut that off though and just do it, can you accelerate the cleanup process?
Because it's kind of wild just having like like a dead vine just like hanging off the side of your house or whatever. But you can keep it there if you want, I guess.
So I don't, so like I said, hop farmers, they're cutting the twine, letting it fall, and they're just hanging a new one up next year. If you're wanting to reuse your hop twine, whichever you use, you could unwrap it, but it would take forever. I just let the new ones grow over top of the old dead ones.
That makes sense.
And honestly, over the climate, because you don't want to use anything with like chemicals or anything, they just rot after a couple years anyway. So your rope's going to really only be good for a year or two anyway.
Well, I know with perennials, like tulips and some of those things, you want the leaf that was green to almost be totally brown before you remove it.
Yeah.
At least that's what a neighbor told me. Because that gave it a better start next year versus if you cut it, or mowed it over while the leaves were still green. Now, they always came up. But she would holler at me if I mowed them down before the leaves on a perennial turned brown and died totally. But I didn't know if hops was the same way or not.
Like I said, I don't claim to be a gardener. That's where, like I said, I stuck with it more the home brewer easy side.
Okay.
Like I said, you all can ask me as many questions as you like.
The last question I want to ask Chris is, Chris, how much success did you have with the final product and the brew that you made?
I would say that good success with each of them. But like Joey was talking about, if you do use some of the hops that are relatively young, you do get more of those grassy notes like off of them. And that's what I found in like the beers that I've typically used on, because I'm lazy and I don't pick through, the ones that are ripe and the ones that are ready. Right. I just dump all the shit in there. Yeah. So, but that just comes with how deep into it you want to go. And if you do try and harvest when they're browning and all the rest of that stuff. So
I guess that's where I would conclude beer styles if you're going to use your homegrown hops in beers. Like I said, I do it more for the novelty of it. There's actually a lot of cool things if you research that you can do with hops. I know people who put them in pillows. There's something in the rhizomes that's supposed to make you sleepy, or not in the rhizomes, in the hops that are supposed to make you sleepy. So I've seen people make pillows out of like hops for small children to help them sleep better. But in conclusion, if you're wanting to use them in a beer, most of the literature out there is going to say still hop it traditionally with pellets, like your 60-minute edition. Use traditional pellets and use your homegrown hops more to like your 30-minute editions on. Right. Because that way you can get a lot of it. Because, you've commented multiple times how aromatic. These are like 3 years old. Yeah. They're very aromatic.
Which is similar to what Frank's question is now. How long will they last freezing? You said those have been in your freezer.
These have been in my
2 years, and they smell fresh.
Yes.
It's vacuum sealed and then frozen. So Frank, how long they should last? In a freezer, a couple years probably at least.
You're going to want to use them honestly within a week if they're fresh off the vine.
Okay.
So if you're not going to use them after you harvest them, you're going to want to use them within that week. If you're not going to use them that day, you're going to want to dehydrate them. Like I said, I have a dehydrator. I've seen people set up like box fans out in the hot sun, put them on screens,
dehydrate them outside.
To dehydrate them outside. There's a lot of ways you can do it in bulk, and then vacuum seal bags and storing them in the freezer. Honestly, like I said, these are like 3 years old, and they still, you have to admit, when we open that pack, they smell like they're
you see it,
fresh.
It's finally getting there. It's popping open, starting to look like
a hop.
Okay.
So, it's just one of those things where a little bit trial and error. They're a lot of fun, but beer styles, like I said, I would probably stay away from IPAs just because you have to use so much. The grassy notes are really going to take over. Try not to use them in the 60-minute edition, but if you want to, and just know that your beer could vary. That's the downfalls. We don't know how many alpha acids are in them.
Right.
We're really just kind of shooting from the hip with them.
So if you're trying to make a consistent beer, it's hard.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't brew a competition beer with your own homegrown hops. It's more of a, something fun to do. You're that much more grain to glass, and so makes it a lot of fun.
All right, Chris, anything else to add to your hop growing?
No, I think we covered it all. This is good.
All right, yeah, all right.
I appreciate you all. Do you remember next week's topic?
Right, we're going to talk about brewing and price. I know we talked about that because you've said people are now coming in the store now that beer prices have gone crazy. Chris, I don't know the last time you went out and tried to buy a nice, 6-pack of
$14 for a 4-pack of Jackie O's Dark Apparition. I did that over the weekend. $14.
It's gotten a little crazy. So we are seeing people now come in asking about brewing as a cost savings, versus, not I just want to do it. I just kind of want to make my own thing. No, now it's, hey, I don't want to spend that amount of money anymore for brew or a high quality brew. So I think that's what we're going to talk about 2 weeks from now. The show is going to be about, how inexpensive you can either get into brewing and or just how inexpensive of a recipe or ways to do it if you just are trying to cut cost and make an inexpensive home brew.
Well, that's definitely I was always against that topic, but you're definitely seeing the trends anytime that it definitely seems like right now with everything getting more expensive, we are starting to see much more of the people brewing on a budget, which is great. That's where I got started.
Sure.
And brewing goes through different waves. And I think it's past the, I don't want to say it's past the whatever, but it definitely seems more people are getting, you can go out and like you said, Chris, get a, $16 six pack, bring it home and hang out with your friends, or you could brew a batch of beer for probably, brewing on a budget. You can,
and I'm
make
sure
couple
we'll use our
cases.
normal Sierra Nevada as a target when we're talking how to make an inexpensive beer, but something that still tastes good.
Well, that'll also be the thing is we'll discuss the recipe we're going to brew on cast and show you like apples to apples how much cheaper it would be versus and even kind of compare it to if you bought. We won't give spoilers to the next one, but the next one's going to be basically brewing on a budget.
Yep. All right,
and that'll do it.
Chris, where can we find you? Give us some information.
Find me on Twitter at Chris Allen FFWX. It's fantasy football season, or at least with the draft next week. So a lot of my content will be around that. But yeah, we'll also be down at the store brewing here within the next couple of weeks. So we'll have some video to show y'all.
Okay. Joey, store hours, everything's still the same?
Everything's up to date. If you'd like to work here, please send your applications to Joey at HBYOB.com. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Say goodnight.